Everybody, Chris and Lumen here. I got two important topics to cover today, but because the second topic has the potential to run longer, I'm going to split them up and I'm just going to do the first part here in this video. So this is the continuation of what we've been doing over time. Watching that I Pet Goat video, it's just like every so often we hit a time marker in which Epinoia prompts me to go back and look at it again. Now, because I Pet Goat videos tend to draw in people from outside the channel, if at any time I say something that what's he talking about, just ask a question in the comments. That way I don't keep spending all this time in all these videos trying to give everybody a rundown of what we do here and who all these characters are. But to keep it extremely simple, it's if you absolutely had to categorize me, I'm a Gnostic Christian, and I go by that framework because that's what was taught to me by that intuitive guidance that certain people have. So we did predict, or rather she predicted, that there was going to be the big, July 15th thing. That was a time marker. It went 5 days in either direction, and the big thing that we ended up waiting for, not knowing that that's what it was the Trump event. That was the big thing, and that continues to yield very interesting fruit. We're playing out a script here. We're playing out the end of the story for the world. So there are certain scripted events that happen that are kind of like nexus points that lead to everything else. So that was a big one. And all the other things that have been going on, we're just waiting on the big things that myself and the remote viewers and stuff have seen and drawn and described. Dick Algeier from Future Forecasting Group did an interview the other day, and he made a really great point, a little bit more simply and more eloquently than I can typically do it. But when it comes to consciousness, consciousness is in the realm outside of time. So I've explained that before, on this channel when we're doing quantum window stuff. Right? For me right now, it's now. By the time you watch this video, it will also be now. Now is the only real time there ever is. But in consciousness, to try and map it out, we've concocted this system of time, which goes into a bunch of other weird things. But in consciousness, there's no time. So it's very, very difficult to pin things down on a specific date. The best that we can often do is to use the system that exists in this world that we were told in the beginning. This is for signs and seasons, like let the stars be your guide, like astrology. So we can look at what the stars are doing to give us a kind of an idea of when things are going to happen. That's how we arrived at the July 15th date, because it was the Uranus and Mars conjunction on Algol, which perfectly described the Trump event. But Epinoia led me to go back and look at I Pet Goat 2 again, and we first did the little reversal clip, which I showed previously, but I'll put it again in here for people that might not have seen it, in which we reversed the only really spoken part in the whole video, which is George Bush when he's trying to figure out what to say. And when we reversed it, to me, it very clearly sounded like August, which beginning of August is the time frame that I've been getting pointed to for at least, a little over 7 months, at least that. But she told us that things were, getting short in time, as far back as beginning of last year. But my personal 7-year path that I've been on kind of comes to a conclusion at the beginning of August. So we were already looking at that time. And then when we reversed it, he said August. Now this is where it gets interesting. So when I posted that little clip, it was just that. So I can only take credit for part of what we're going to cover in this video. One of the commenters on that video pointed out a whole bunch of stuff, and I saw extra details to it too, but stuff that I probably never would have seen. But the stuff that he pointed out is in such a tightly packed cluster that it is literally indicating like two big things that are basically imminent, could happen at any time from here on out. And they're kind of hard to deny when you see them all like lined up together and put them in conjunction with all the other data that we already have. So if you want to know all about what we found, then don't go away.
I've got a river running right into you. I've got a blood trail red in the blue. Something you say or something you do, a taste of the divine. You got my body, flesh and bone, yeah. The sky above me, earth below. Raise me
Okay, so what we'll do here is I've already prepared a clip. It's going to show the sections that I want you to focus on, and then it's going to replay, and it's going to add some context pictures to those sections. And then at the end, we'll tie it all together because the pictures do not show everything that you need to see. Close, but not everything. And there's some parts there toward the end that we threw in there because like I don't know exactly how it fits in, but it involves elements that have been coming up lately in my own divinations and stuff that I get from Epinoia and things that I've also seen in the remote viewer stuff. So let's go ahead and watch the clip. Now, obviously we're skipping over a lot of decodes in this video that we've just simply covered before. Like, these are the new ones. Okay, so the first thing was, if you play George Bush talking backwards, it sounds like August. Then he turns into Obama, which, what's interesting about that, you know, if we watched iPad Goat 2 like many years ago, it's kind of like, you know, how's he fit in? Like, okay, he was a big past president, but now we're starting to understand, like, he never actually left the game. He's always around, and quite a few people, I think rightly so, suspect that he's actually like the real shadow president with his hand up the Biden puppet's butt. Like, he's who's actually been running things, because, you know, you see these stories like, well, Obama's telling Biden he needs to do this, and Obama's telling Biden he needs to do that, and Obama hasn't endorsed Kamala Harris, and it's like, why is he still involved? He never got uninvolved. So it's interesting that, you know, he's a factor in this video. So then it pans to the little girl, which we know to be a representation of what we call Lumen. She's the divine feminine spirit. She's got the blonde hair. She's got the white dress. She's a child. I mean, Lumen's not always a child, but become like children is a big thing in the Gnostic stuff, as far as what you got to do to kind of beat the game. And what that means is, like, you're basically breaking down your adult mind, all the stuff the world programmed into you. We covered all that stuff on this channel with the protocols that we do and all that. Plus, she's holding the apple, which ties her back to the Nag Hammadi, you know, where the divine feminine enter the scene, you know, the Adam and Eve story that they didn't give you, that religion didn't give you, like the original story, before authority co-opted the whole thing 400 years later and made it an official thing. So all the symbology is there. She's got this gold circle around her. It's kind of indicating like she's protected. And then what happens is the lights go dark, and it's almost like she gets sleepy, and then she just goes limp. Now, as the light goes dark and she goes limp, two things are also being lit up in the back. One is the rabbit, and the other is the exit sign on the door. So what I come to understand this time, you know, what was coming to me from what teaches me, is it is kind of a I won't say pre-tribulation, because we've been in the tribulation for a long time, at least in the Christian model. Like, Christians don't own this model. Like, this is a system that has repeated many times. But either which way, it's indicating that certain people are removed before this other stuff starts. But it's not who you think. It's not the people that think it's going to be them. I'll explain that later. But yeah, so all that's happened, and that's when she goes limp and lets go of the apple. And that could symbolize a bunch of different things, because a lot of, like, it's almost like tarot, in which there can be several meanings. Let me stop here. Anything that is put in front of us by her, Spirit of Truth, to give us signs and symbols and help us figure things out, they can have multiple layers. Pretty much everything that she uses with me has multiple layers. Tarot has multiple layers of meaning and code. You know, 72 names of God and their use, they can have multiple uses and layers. There's multiple layers in iPad Goat 2. So one interpretation can work at one time and another interpretation can work later. So I don't fully know, but I kind of got the, you know, the circle around her kind of represents, you know, the container that we're all in. And then she goes limp and lets go of the apple is kind of like, you know, the soul escaping. That's why the first interpretation we had for that is when it splits open and the two seeds come together and form the lotus flower. Well, that's the whole alchemy thing that I've detailed on this channel that happened to me. If you complete the Gnostic journey, if you complete the alchemical great work, then you unlock your lumen, your divine feminine half of your mind. She's no longer subconscious. She moves up to the right hemisphere of the brain, and you are merged together through several different meanings that are shown in the tarot, because the tarot has a map in it that leads to all this. Lover's card, Two of Cups, all that stuff. You basically put the two into one. You know, become the divine hermaphrodite, the rebus, the balanced masculine feminine aspects. Like, this is all stuff that was taught in the original Gnostic Christian texts before the church stripped out everything that made things make sense. But I digress. Let's get to the key stuff as far as the timing. And the biggest one of all is the frickin' rabbit. I didn't see that one. That was what one of the viewers pointed out. But he didn't have the full context of it. So let me give you the full context of it. If any one of these pieces would be like, I'm not sure about that, except the rabbit one is really big. And then when you put all the pieces together, it's really hard to kind of like, okay, I don't know about this one, because that's kind of hard to dismiss. There's too many pieces in play here. So the interpretation that we got was the rabbit symbolizes the big timestamp, the one that we were already looking at and we've been looking at all month, the Mars-Uranus algal conjunction. So what happened 2 days, you know, like I said, it starts anytime you have these big things in astrology, like the effects can start like a couple days before and they can last a couple days after. Sometimes it can be up to 2 weeks, like with Mercury retrogrades and stuff like that. So we were already headed toward this big event knowing something was going to happen, and that's when the Trump assassination attempt. Now, that in of itself is something we'll never pick apart, but what she told me, why it looked so weird to me, and why there's so much going on with this. It's basically like a baked potato of conspiracy wrapped in tinfoil. So much going on with this, so much of it looks weird. She's like, because it's part of the script, the big script. I don't mean script as in like this side staged it or that side staged it. I mean like the whole thing is scripted on a higher level. Like it's a key point in the story for other things to then pan out. But when it comes to that rabbit, he's got that very clear hole right up against his ear, his right ear, his upper right ear, which is exactly where Trump got hit. Okay, so you might think, well, that's, you know, yeah, okay, maybe, but that's a stretch. Okay, it's a white rabbit. Big symbol, going all the way to Alice in Wonderland. Follow the white rabbit. That's in the Matrix. Like, it's a huge symbol. It's such a huge symbol that all these left-leaning liberal organizations have it listed in there, like, these are secret symbols for right-wing, extreme right-wing Nazi extremist conspiracy groups, and okay, whatever. And the big key thing is, like, it was used by QAnon, which I'm not a Q guy. Okay, I don't like stuff where I don't know where it's coming from, but it was clearly part of the script, at least in the early days. And then it got to this point where it just kind of seemed like it took a sharp turn and went off into like misleading people. But back in the beginning, like, it was a big thing, and it was very closely tied to Trump. He might have, like, wink, wink, nudge, nudged it, acknowledged it at times, but we don't ever really know. You run into problems figuring out this game when you assume that you know things that you don't, or accept things as true because authority told you. Like, if you want to be able to navigate this game, like, you have to let go of like thinking that you know things, or else you'll just get lost. You'll get lost in the maze. But the white rabbit was associated and used a lot by the QAnon group. Why does that matter here? Because of this picture. Like, for the few minutes leading up to the Trump shooting, this guy was in this particular perfect spot in the stands. And when Trump is like, you know, pointing to the board all the time and having his hand up, he was basically, I'm not saying it was intentional. I'm not saying anything. I'm saying, like, this is what we see with our eyes. Okay, that's all I'm saying. So his hand's like pointing to this guy. Now, this guy within the Q conspiracy realm, his name's like Vincent Fusca or something like that. Supposedly he's just like this Trump super fan that's like always at all the rallies. But the big conspiracy back in those years was, it's not me, I'm just telling you what was said, was like this guy was actually JFK Jr., who wasn't actually killed. He's been living in seclusion and he's always in disguise. Okay, well, that's a pretty big thing. That's this very controversial person that's involved in, that's the center point of some of this conspiracy stuff, just happened to be at that rally, happened to be sitting in that exact spot, happened to be right where Trump is pointing. I mean, it looks like, I mean, he's not really pointing at him. It looks like he's pointing at him. I mean, right there. Happens to be right there. Doesn't freaking hardly move when the shots are fired. But he was the centerpiece of the Q thing. And that connects to the white rabbit. And Trump has been, you know, dropping stuff, you know, here and there. You know, back in the day, there was a big thing about him saying, you know, maybe it's the calm before the storm. And the Q thing always talking about the storm coming. So you got Trump, you got the white rabbit, which is a big, big, big symbol, which was used by the Q movement, in which the Q movement is associated, at least in theory, by the theorists, with this particular guy, who they claim was this particular person, whose father was another president who was killed by a sniper rifle. And then you got this white rabbit in I Pet Goat 2 that's got, like, looks like a bullet hole right on the edge of his upper ear. That's an awful lot of convenient pieces to be smashed so closely together. And if that whole thing wasn't weird enough, then everyone started seeing the UFOs and the pictures and the videos. So there's freaking UFOs there too, and the whole thing going on. It's crazy. It's so crazy. It's one of those things that people are just going to keep picking apart because they understand that, like, there's something here, but you can't tell what it is. It's almost as if it's perfectly crafted at a higher level in the script to where everybody can make it mean whatever they want it to mean. But either which way, that was the biggest thing in the closest proximity to the July 15th algal conjunction. The thing that has the most potential effect on where the story goes from now. So then the next thing that we see in the I Pet Goat video, next to the exit door, is a buck deer jumping. This is one of the other two things that commenter pointed out. He's like, you got a buck jumping. And on July 21st, we had the buck full moon. Well, so what? Well, July 21st is also the day that Joe Biden, of his own free will, or probably not, either which way, that's when it was reported, resigned. That's a major plot point, especially leading into everything that hasn't happened yet. Okay, so there's two things that are already sandwiched close together that happened during the time frame that we basically threw the red flags up and says, like, we're in the time zone now. We're in the zone where it begins. But wait, there's more. So the next thing he pointed out was, the apple opens up into a lotus flower. So I don't know how he found this out, but the name Kamala in Sanskrit means lotus. I had to look it up myself because it just seemed too crazy. It does. And then you got Obama, so now you have like a second layer of meaning. It hits Obama's foot and he's like sweating because like there's this whole big thing happening in our government right now that nobody's actually seen, or nobody really knows what's going on. But people are pointing out things like Joe Biden is like, handing key duties over to his cabinet, and it's like, is there some weird coup going on? Like, who's actually running the show? Like, we knew Joe wasn't running it in the beginning, but who's really running things right now? Hopefully not her, because this isn't a left or a right thing. Like, she's a babbling idiot. Like, literally a babbling idiot. So this is like the perfect time for other countries, if they wanted to attack us from a strategic standpoint. You'll never get a better chance than right now. So all these other things that the remote viewers have drawn with missiles and stuff like that, now's actually the perfect time to do it. So let's trace this back. You got the white rabbit with the bullet hole next to his right upper ear, which is also a symbol of QAnon. And there was a QAnon guy standing right there with Trump when he got shot. And then you got the buck jumping, buck moon, which is also the exact same day that Joe Biden resigned. And then you got the apple, which opens up to a lotus, which also means Kamala. So the way that I understand this, the way it's being shown to me, it lines up with what I was already waiting for. Like, something big is going to happen. But what I've been working towards all this time is like, when is my time here up? Because I'm completely unattached to this world. When do I get out of this place? And that's what the thing actually showed. And it's almost like you had to see it all together to see it. But like when the little girl, when it goes dark, when things get dark all of a sudden, but there's light still shining on her, she goes limp, and the apple rolls out of the circle while the exit sign is freaking lit up in the room. That's the rapture. But again, that's not what Christians think it is. So we'll get to that. So basically, what I get from that, when it was shown to me, it matches up with everything we've been talking about in the last couple of weeks, and what we've been talking about even going back months, as far as like end of summer. End of summer is when is what we're looking for, and end of summer is when my path ends. I've completed the whole hero's journey map. Everything is done except whatever the last big climatic finale is. And as I explained in previous videos, it just so happens that my personal story seems to be lining up with the world story. And when we were going into July 15th, some of the stuff that she was showing me was really, really big things. And it didn't seem logical that it would happen on July 15th. But as we speculated and later proved to be true, July 15th was kind of like stepping on the button that activates everything. So, yeah. But in that scene of iPad, there's other stuff I haven't mentioned. Jeez, I almost forgot. Psalm 23. So, it then starts to go into the sequence. And on the graffiti outside of the school windows, it says Psalm 23. And it has a lightning bolt in it, and it's underneath a light. It's dark outside, but there is a light outside, and it's shining down on the graffiti that says Psalm 23. The lightning bolt is also key because it is also in the classroom where it shows the human brain being split by a lightning bolt. with a dragon right beside it. So I already covered all that. Go back and watch the videos. Watch the first big July 15th video. Like any of the videos in the last couple weeks that are like close to 2 hours long. Like we covered what all that means. That's like ancient symbology. That has to do with the destroyer event or the harvest and the reset and like the big thing, like the big end. Like that has to do with that. Like we already covered that. But in this case, it's still in that Psalm 23. Now that Psalm 23 is important for two reasons. First, if you go back several videos, I don't remember which one it was, but people that have been watching know. I was, because on this channel we chronicle the path every single day. Like I don't plan these videos in advance. I do like what she tells me to do. And I was working on like what else do we got to do to get ready to finish this game, to complete this game. And this has come up in the past, which is everybody on a subconscious level has this like universal daddy issue. And part of it is because of what the world teaches you and what religion taught you. So it got everybody all mixed up. But everybody at some point in their life, or even continually, blames God for their suffering. Now, in Gnosticism, for those of you that don't know, it is very clearly explained where it is not explained in the Bible. So you'll wonder why. Actually, you learn a lot from the Gnostic books, and you understand exactly why they tried to wipe everybody out and get rid of all those books. But thankfully, and coincidentally, around the same time the church was created, that's when they dated these scrolls that were all hidden in jars and buried in Nag Hammadi, Egypt. That's when they were buried. It's like, oh my God, they're wiping us out. They're going to wipe out this knowledge. We got to hide it. And then it was discovered closer to the end in the 50s, and now we got it back. And it's like, oh, this is what you hid. Now it all makes sense. So basically, in case you're new, once you see what the Nag Hammadi shows you very clearly, then you can see it in the other book, and things make sense. Because even right now, everyone's like, why is God so mean in the Old Testament, and then all of a sudden he's like this nice guy in the New Testament? It doesn't make any sense. Okay, well, what's the Occam's razor's simple explanation for that? It's not the same. It's not the same thing. So when Jesus is referring to the Father, his Father in heaven, that you're supposed to pray to, he is not referring to the Creator in the beginning of Genesis. I don't have time to teach you that, but we've covered ad nauseum here, and just pick up a Kindle copy of the Nag Hammadi, start with the Secret Book of John, and you'll figure it out. But anyway, but I digress. We're getting to the Psalm 23 thing. But the way the Bible has been concocted, it makes it very, very difficult, especially when you overlap it to the Nag Hammadi, to know like who they're talking about at any given time, at least in the Old Testament. Because there should be like 3 gods in there, if you understand the Gnostic scriptures. You got the first one that created everything, which is the demiurge, and then he got thrown down by Sophia because he just wouldn't shut up. I am the greatest God ever. There's no God but me. And then everybody outside of this place is like, oh, we got, do something about him. So he got thrown down. Then one of his first sons, one of the first 12 archons, he saw these 2 chicks basically whip his dad's ass. And he's like, ooh, maybe I'm on the wrong side here. So he switches sides and starts, praising Sophia, who created the first thing. So she basically enlightens him and puts him in charge of this place and moves him up to the seventh heaven, kind of like as an administrator. His name was Sabaoth. First one was Yaldabaoth, also Sakla or Samael. And it's kind of hard to tell, even from the Nag Hammadi. It's like, okay, where's the in linear time space? Like, when did this guy get taken off his seat of power and the other guy put in his place? Because once the other guy got put in his place, that's when that guy started creating, like, you know, all the angels and everything, and like all these things that you know today started getting created. Like, there's stuff before that. But the Holy Spirit, Epinoia, Spirit of Truth, Mother of the Living, the original spiritual Eve, she's from outside of this place. And she's connected to Christ. When Christ came down in human form, he set a bunch of things straight. That's when he passed the baton. This is in the regular Bible. He passed the baton to the Spirit of Truth. Told all his disciples, I'm leaving you, but you're getting somebody new. Spirit of Truth. Now they gender swapped the she to a he, because they took all the divine feminine stuff out. They didn't want the Abrahamic religions, they don't show you anything about divine feminine. And they will freak out if you bring it up. But think Father, Son, other nebulous guy, or Father, Mother, Son. Which one makes more sense to you? Just like, you know, the rest of the world. But anyway, when Christ is telling you to pray to the Father, that is like the infinite consciousness, like the highest of the high. Not the one that just created this tiny little bubble. This place is like a tiny little bubble in an ocean of multiverse. Okay, and the Father that Jesus is talking about is that multiverse. It's everything. So that's who he told you to pray to. But church intentionally confuses you to thinking that they're the same thing. Okay? So it does become confusing where sometimes you get stuff out of like the Old Testament. And it's like, which one are we talking about here? But the fact of the matter is the Father's always been there, even if they weren't talking about him. But, you know, the two big things they've said always works well is the Lord's Prayer. I change the wording to the Father's Prayer. Because it's addressed to the Father. But they like to change, like Lord is actually a name that means like a person of an authority, which authority equals Archon, which Archons equal the bad guys. You know, you got the spiritual bad guys and you got the flesh and blood bad guys that run everything. Like, if it's authority, if it's anything that is authority, it's not your friend. So that's why, you know, they like to, and it says in the Nag Hammadi, the Archons like to switch names around and, you know, assign names of things that are good to things that are bad, and take the names of things that are bad to things that are good, and like try to confuse everybody. So you kind of need her to sort that out. At the lowest level, she is like your conscience and your intuition. But if you do work, like, you can get to the point to where she can actually speak to you, because she's the Spirit of Truth that Jesus handed the reins over to. Like, that's in your book. But what's church tell you? Pray to Jesus. He ain't here. He turned it over to her. And she is also the Word. What the Father says, she repeats to you. That's in your book. It's funny how, like, church doesn't seem to teach the things quite right, isn't it? But anyway, but I digress. She steers my conversation, so maybe there's somebody that's watching this that needed to hear this. Okay, we got to get back to this point. Psalm 23. I was working on that whole issue, the universal daddy issue. I blame God on a subconscious level. You blame God for your suffering. First thing I was led to was the Colburn Bible, because Christianity does not own God. And the Colburn Bible version actually makes things make a lot more sense. Like, this world is meant to be hard. This world is meant to test you. This world is meant to put you, it's here for the education and growth of your soul to move on to a bigger thing. It's not supposed to be comfortable. If you're comfortable, you're in cahoots with the world. We're going to talk about this in the next video. But yeah, you just pray to the, like if you have a problem with religion, this works because it worked for me. You pray to the highest point of consciousness. That'll be it. That'll be the big thing. And it'll reach. And I'm like, how do we sort this out? She's like, you can do the Lord's Prayer and you do Psalm 23. So I started doing Psalm 23 like a few days ago. And then like 2 days later, that's when we're looking at I Pet Goat 2 again. And Psalm 23 is like in a key part. And it's got that lightning bolt. The lightning bolt, the lightning bolts that you see have to do with the storm. And that has to do with like how the people with the souls, the light, are kind of like raptured out of here. You don't fly up in the freaking air like they always tell you. It's going to be like that little girl in the video. You just drop dead. And you go freaking taken out of here. Now here's the last thing about that 23. I think the other guy was the one that came up with that too. It very clearly shows you, like very, very clearly, this long cycle began with 9/11. Because you got the classroom scene of George Bush starting out in there. And he's being puppeted by the devil hands, which would be the demiurge. And then as soon as you pan out from the school, you see the towers collapsing. So it makes it very clear that the beginning of the whole thing started back in 9/11. But Psalm 23 plus all these things that we just talked about were time locked. Nobody could have ever known what they meant until what happened in the last week or so took place. That's a key thing. Like, she time locks things like that. This video is actually inspired by her. The story behind I Pet Goat 2 is the guy had this crazy, insane prophetic dream, and he spent several years and like $5,000 getting it animated. And if you're that driven to do it, it's because she's driving you. Yeah, so Psalm 23, 9/11 was 2001. What's 23? What's 2001 plus 23? If you're not good at math, I'll tell you, it's 2024. Everything that you needed to decode it is in the beginning of the freaking video. Okay, to keep this at a semi-reasonable time, we're going to scrap, the rest of the video. Like those extra pieces we put in there at the beginning from I Pet Goat 2, like they seem to connect to some other things that I'm looking at. Some of which we covered in a couple videos back. Video titled "Follow the Veil," but they just kind of stood out to me, so I collected those two. But let's just stick to like the main thing right now. So that's all we got for right now. Let me know what you think. If you want to contact us, get any of their energy pendants, energy work, stuff to help you connect to her or shut down the adversary mind, the negative thought generator. We're going to talk more about that in the next video. Then you can reach us at clumencreations.etsy.com. Chris and Lumen. See you next time.